Hello. I have decided to stop stalling, and we are now doing the end of season review, even though it's like 2 weeks after the end of the season's end. So before I get started here though, I would like to say, Talentless is recruiting. Yes, that is right. If you are in the global server and are interested in joining, I'm pretty sure all 4 guilds have empty slots, honestly, just because of, end of season shuffling and whatnot. And if you're worried about, it being like super tryhard, or you need an insane account, let me assure you, that is not the case outside of maybe Talentless 1, because Talentless 2, 3, and 4 are a lot more laid back environments, getting more laid back as you move down, of course. But I mean, on the scuffed account side of things, I have seen some very, very scuffed accounts perform quite well in Guild War. So if you're worried about that, trust me, bro. You don't need as good a gear as you think to compete in higher level Guild Wars. Like, that's the best thing about Guild War, honestly. You don't need insane gear to compete at the top, because you're fighting a computer, not a person who can gear gap you. Because you can just correct unit, gap them back, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, let me just hop into the spreadsheet here. With that out of the way, though. So, what this spreadsheet is essentially taking literally every encounter that has been fought over the course of an entire season, and it's just been, autistically inputted into the spreadsheet, right? It's the same as last season, but I know I have a lot of newer viewers here. So, it's taking all of this, and, if you're dyslexic, you're probably having a hard time here now, but that's okay. This part doesn't matter, it's just, I'll scroll through it though, just in case you want to pause and look at some stuff maybe. But it's all the encounters, and what it does, right, is it takes all of these, and it puts them onto here. So now it looks nice, and we don't have to strain our eyes looking at all of that. So what we can see at the top here is there's a trend where we have Destina and Roana as the top 2. I'm pretty sure it's been this way for at least 3 seasons in a row now, and I don't think it's going to stop either. However, unlike last season, I'm using a lot more Aria, which, I mean, just slam Aria was kind of a meme, but it worked pretty well, as you can see, considering she never lost. Although, most things never lost, except for that one time where I used Fire Cermia. That was fun. Anyways, but yeah, we can see that I mostly have scout units here. However, I've got pretty standard like follow-up units as well, like Strays and Watcher in here, which are you can only use these on follow-up essentially, because on scout this is just too much that can go wrong. Ever since they essentially buffed Snow Crystal to be an artifact with the Strays. Or, I mean, like, HP values being, like, unexpected as well as a thing, I guess, but that's less of a concern than missing a straight-up critical strike. But, yeah, I mean, Destina, Roana, and Aria, Christy are the top 4, and it's mostly, outside of Aria, right, it's mostly supports up here. But everything, as you can see, is very tanky, right, in the top, 10 or so, I guess, if we go right here, right? Because, I mean, that's what you want as a scout comp. You want to not die, generally speaking. But yeah. I think next season, going forward, it'll obviously be these 2 up here. It'll probably be less Aria, honestly. But maybe not, because just slamming Aria kind of works into a lot of things. However, I don't think it'll work anymore into the Rand Senia Lilius, now that I think about it, because for some unknown reason, they decided to give her a 20% damage increase EE. So that's fun. Thanks, Smilegate. Because now I was barely surviving sometimes into like the giga damage setups. I don't think I survive anymore. But yeah, that's the offense encounters. And then if you want to compare that to the defense encounters, we can see that there's one unit that was used quite a bit, almost 65% of the time. There was a Senia that I fought in one of the 2 rounds, I'm pretty sure. And Well, that's a lot of Cermia, and that's a lot of Ran. And if you want to compare, I have the last season spreadsheet open as well here. Oh wait, we can. I'm not very scripted on this. If you want to compare the Roana Destina usage to the last season, I had 60% Roana usage last season and only 47, 45 even. So, you know, slightly less here, but the top view is. Wait. I had more DPS in the top this time. Sorry, I'm getting distracted here. But yeah, if you want to compare the defense though, you can see that, I mean, it's still the top core, actually. There's a lot less Aiden, though, I'm pretty sure, this season. Oh, no, there's still a lot of Aiden, never mind, I lied. But I think we're going to see a new addition, though, to this top section here, though. Because if you look at Landy, who came out in the last 2 weeks of the season, because she's got a very similar amount of usage as the Cermia. So I expect some Cermia defense round 1, and then some Landy defense round 2, and it's just gonna be a grand time. And I actually don't know how we're gonna deal with this. Honestly, it looks rough. It looks rough, but yeah, Rand's obviously gonna be like immortal on defense because for some reason, you know, they made an opener so he can like outspeed anything, and he can strip your team, and then he can death break your team, which is pretty powerful as it'll turn out. So yeah, we've got that going for us. So there will be Cermia, Rand, Lilius in one round, and then Landy and some other stuff in another round, and I'm gonna cry. I think next season is going to be one of the hardest to get a really high win rate. I don't expect to get 100% win rate next season, even though I would have technically gotten it this season. Because if I didn't bring Fire Expedition Cermia, but I digress. You can also see that like things like Lethe that came out later, I probably would have had up higher because she's, you know, HP. Base damage dealer, which is generally good for offense. Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of it for the spreadsheet data. Let me just scroll down a little bit here. I don't think 95 is accurate because I probably typoed some of these entries. Like, I have Kawazu written here, but I did Ricardo for a lot of other entries. I don't know. I'll just scroll through this a little bit if you want to see all of the units I use. I'm surprised I actually hit this 90 number though, because I wasn't actually trying to stat pad really. I was for like the first week, as you can see, week or two, but after that I really didn't try. It just kind of happened where I used some weird stuff for content, homie. But yeah, if you want like just an idea of what you should build, right, it's definitely going to be these units in like the top 10 or so, right? Or top 20. After that point, you get into some pretty niche scenarios where it's not really relevant. And I guess the same could be said for if you're trying to build a defense, right? Because, well, as you can see, you should probably build Cermia if you're making a defense, and you should probably have Ran on your defense. I don't think Shu and Mercedes are going to be that common next season. Because the only reason they were really being used is because you needed something in the other round that was kind of annoying to deal with. But now that Landy exists, that kind of just gives you like a free pass for the second round. So if Landy might just kick these out of here, essentially, right? Also, I'm surprised I fought so much Karina. What the fuck? That's a lot of Karina. 7 Karinas in 1 week. That's kind of mental. But yeah. For the units I'm just going to show off here, I'm going to try to mostly focus on the scout units, so I'm not going to really show Strays and Watcher because, I mean, they're not really used on scout, right? So maybe just like and then maybe like Arunka and Lethe, because I think those are both be very relevant next season. I guess, okay, my Krau's on like 6 pieces of free healthcare, so that's notable, I suppose. But yeah, be showing off these builds, and maybe I'll put an album to more of the builds in the description. But yeah, let's just get into that section here. Okay, this is Destina, the most used unit of the season. I think her build has changed a little bit from what I was using. It was just a different boot. If I want to just look at that really quickly here. I just gave this boot to Lethe because it's very high health, but it's the same build. This build is more EHP though, which, I mean, is pretty nice, but minus 16 ER is less nice. But yeah, this build is probably good enough for next season if I don't want to change back. But you want very high bulk on her, you want very high ER on her, so she's a very gear-hungry unit for a Soul Weaver. Obviously, like, you could go all out for the ER so you don't get death broken, but then you risk, you know, dying to stuff. But what makes Destina so versatile is that her kit is just generically good, right? It's not, you know, it's a 50% CR push on 2-turn cooldown, an AoE heal that also can revive if something dies. So you get a lot of value out of that, and just a lot of general safety, right? And also Ice Crystal is an artifact that she can hold, which is generally what you want on your Soul Weavers. Well, of course, any Soul Weaver can hold Ice Crystal, don't get me wrong, but yeah. Just her general utility, and the fact that she is green, so that if Ran RNLs her, she won't die, and other just baiting stuff, right, that green units benefit from. She's got a lot going for her that makes her the most used unit. But yeah, the EE you pretty much always run on, no, literally almost always run on her. Well, no, not almost. Literally always run on her is the 20% CR push. I have seen people swap to the second EE for, I guess, Hell Raid apparently, is what they said, and they lost an attack because of it. Don't be that guy that loses an attack because you're on the reset EE and don't get the extra 20% CR. 50% CR is a lot, and you generally do want the full 50%. I mean, sometimes you don't, and it probably won't be relevant most of the time. But yeah, she will probably, almost certainly, be one of the most used units next season, and you should build her if you don't have her built. Anyways, moving on to Roana here. Okay, this is Roana. She can get away with having a lot more scuffed gear than the Destina, right? Because, I mean, sometimes you're trying to resist, but most of the comps you're bringing her into, it doesn't really matter if she does or doesn't resist because, I mean, she's not cleansing anyways, right? You generally have her paired with something like Crozet for the cleansing, which I guess that's only one target, but I mean, Crozet, Quasi, Roana was very much a comp that was used a lot into Rancelia Lilius, even though that defense, I mean, that comp is easily trapped. But yeah, we've got Celestina on her pretty much all of the time. I mean, sometimes you would run like Ice Crystal or a Proof of Valor if you're tanking Kayron, for example, but generally speaking, it's going to be just Celestine because having S1 healing on her is very good because her S3 is on a 4-turn cooldown as healing, but you get a lot of the healing value from her S2 passive, which is just saying, fuck you to bad RNG, because if you get dual attacked, which would generally be a bad thing, you actually get a heal out of it, so it's not necessarily as bad of a thing. But yeah, I mean, my gear score is pretty low on this. As you can see, I've got a lot of dead stat, but one thing I do think is pretty needed on her a lot of the time, or maybe not anymore because Lua isn't a defense unit anymore, but the immunity set is relevant quite often actually. So I'd recommend putting it on if you can, but if you don't have the gear for immunity, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if Roana is actually going to be used as much next season if we do see a lot of the landed defenses, because on paper, Roana would be quite good into Lanty, but I think in reality, it's not the case, right? I guess it prevents you from just dying to the Salvos, but does it prevent you from just dying to the S3? Probably not. But I mean, if she's baiting something in addition to healing the Landy, maybe it's okay. But then, like, what are your other two units? I don't know. It's theory crafting about something we don't know that exists yet or not, right? We'll just have to wait and see if she actually is used as much or not. But yeah, on to Aria now. Alright, this is the unchanging Aria build. I don't think this changed outside of the artifact being a lower level because I have the higher level one on Solitaria right now. But I think a couple of times I switched her to an ER ring maybe, but that's about the extent of things. The thing you're looking for Aria though is a high defense weighted EHP, right? I don't think her speed matters too much because pretty much in all cases, you're going to be pushing her up with Destina. And if there is a case where you're not pushing her up with Destina, I don't think her speed is going to be mattering that much because the def probably isn't that good to begin with. But yeah, she just kind of wins if she doesn't have anything that stops her from being brought in, right? So something like a, for example, you know, high damage shoe that can one-shot her, maybe? I don't know. Aria, oh no, let's give the real example of Rand sending a Lilius where Lilius S3 just one-taps your whole team. That is a thing that can happen and stops the Aria from being good. Or if the Rand def breaks and kills you with the Lilius S3 afterwards is another thing, right? So the ER is very necessary for her to be built, and more ER is good. But the thing with adding more ER is you gotta lose something, right? And I think the thing you would want to lose is probably just damage, honestly. Because surviving and resisting is more important than, like, you know, doing damage. Because if they are on more extreme builds, right, if we look at it like that, it's less likely that they have sufficient bulk to begin with, right? So the only thing that losing out on damage would be losing out on, you know, kill potential into more standard builds. But generally speaking, standard builds don't do too well on defense to begin with, right? So, yeah. I think this Aria build is pretty good though, so I'll probably be sticking with it until it loses, which it won't, so, yeah. But I also probably won't be bringing it in general that much. We shall see though. But yeah, Aria is definitely a good build, especially if you're in a lower rank guild. Like, Aria is the best unit if you don't care if your opponent is trapping their defense or not. Like, she just wins if you pretend like there are no lose conditions for her. 99% of the time, at least. I mean, sometimes you'll probably run into some dude that's trying to beat your Aria, but I mean, that is not relevant enough. Definitely build Aria for Gildor if you want an easy time, I suppose. Anyways, moving on to Christy now. Okay, so I was using a very bulky Christy for the majority of the season. Now, please forgive my artifact. I don't want to slot to plus 30 for the stats to look nicer. But yeah, Christy, a lot of people just like go full out on the ER and they're like at 320, but they also die to a light breeze, which I did not like. A lot of the times, I saw people's Christy's just getting one tap by Lilius, and then you're tanking on Aria without an Arius, which generally isn't a good time. But yeah, she was generally always paired with the Aria. There were sometimes I paired her with things like Dark Corvus, for example, to give him some ER, but pretty much every other time, though, it was into the paired with the Aria, just so she doesn't, you know, get debuff, because Aria getting debuff makes you lose pretty much always. Well, maybe not pretty much always, but generally always. But yeah, Christy's just a knight that gives ER and a lot of stats. Like, this is essentially giving 135 gear score to unit, right? So you suddenly got like, you know, maybe a 550 gear score unit now. That's a pretty high gear score, if you want to look at it like that. Or essentially giving you like 2 main stats. You're equipping 2 rings on somebody. I guess without the substats, but you get the idea. You're equipping 2 rings on somebody. So it is very good, very good. Pretty much always used her on Arius. Sometimes you want the 48 defense for your other stuff if you're not too worried about getting death broken. But honestly, if you're doing that, you might as well just bring another knight, right? But yeah, this Christy build will probably stay the same until I roll a better helmet that has more than 15 effect resist on it, because this helmet is item level 78 and I am using it. Well, to be fair, she doesn't like need like super non-leftover. Like, she just gets high ER leftover gear. Because she doesn't need speed, right? So it doesn't matter if the rest of the rolls are low. Like, this just has 30 ER in it, but 76 equipment score, 82 equipment score, 81 equipment score. Like, it's all pretty bad gear. Outside of the boots are pretty good. But I mean, if we ignore speed existing, which is minus 16, suddenly it's like 70 something equipment score. So maybe not. But yeah, that is Christy. She'll maybe get used less because she's definitely an ego unit, right? Saying yours resist is definitely an ego play because even with all of that extra ER, you can still get debuffed, and I've seen it happen, and I've had it happen to me. So yeah. But let's just move on now to Doris. Okay, this is the most relatable unit on my account. Doris has currently equipped 3 pieces of immunity gear for the broken set, and she has a resist set and just a random revenge helmet. That's an 89 equipment score. Whenever I needed a piece of Soul Weaver gear, I took it from Doris, and yet somehow she is still my 5th most used unit. If that gives you an idea of her power level, right? I always felt like I could make her gear more scuffed and she'd still succeed. Now, she'll probably get used in the next season still, because obviously people will still be putting dark units on their defense, and whenever there's a dark unit, there's generally a Doris to reply to them. But like I said, the likely defense compositions, I don't think it'll be too good, honestly. Although, we've been using Doris a lot to push up Dark Corvus with the Aria comp instead of Destina, so maybe it's actually going to be used even more, and I will put better gear on her for the start of the season, but like, Doris is not an RTA pick, and I am an RTA player, right? Great. But yeah, whenever you see a dark unit, you bring Doris. For an artifact, you either want Candlestick, which gives her very high uptime on the S2 and S3, or you want Water's Origin if you want help tanking on the Doris, because also the Water's Origin technically cycles her as well, which gives higher uptime on the stuff, but it might cycle you into a position where you have to maybe tank an APOC S3 and you're fully injured and your Doris sucks like mine, and you don't have death buff up, so it's a choice on the artifact. I just really like Candlestick 99% of the time. But yeah, moving on to, it looks like Pyllis. Okay, this Pyllis build is definitely a relic of the past, where I've got protection set on her still, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but I don't think it's necessarily like needed anymore either. It was solely used for Lua defenses when she was relevant. Now, it's very low equipment score protection gear, but it's just efficient tank stats, right? So it ends up looking kind of nice, where I've got like almost 2.5k, 25k health, which, I mean, that's pretty tanky. All you really care about Pyllis, though, is surviving, right? You're using her to tank Aiden, you're using her to tank Sea Lilius dual attacks with Aiden, so, okay, maybe you wouldn't want to bring her into Sea Lilius Aiden, but the general idea is, right, you want to survive, and you want to give your team death buff, and just have her own 30% damage reduction for the counter attack and dual attacks. Now, one thing that's important to note about this effect right here is that it doesn't actually apply to herself. It applies to an ally except for the caster, right? So you don't actually get the dual attack damage reduction on her. But generally that's fine, because, you know, this defense stacking is good, and if there's a scenario where you want her to tank a little bit better, you could put like Proof of Valor or Adamant on her for some team mitigation still, and still be fine. The protection is actually pretty nice though, because it gives you extra effective hit pull for 1 turn, right? So it lets you tank your turn 1 when your stacks aren't up and your defense buff isn't up. Ideally, I'd have more ER there, because sometimes this build gets unbuffable by Aiden S1s when the passive part falls off, and that's not very fun. But outside of that, it's fine, honestly. Like, I've never had a problem with this Pyllis build. It doesn't even feel close most of the time. But she's generally just paired like LHD Roana into some Sea Lilius defenses, or if you just need a Dark Knight in general. Like, she's just better than Fallen Cecilia most of the time for Guild War offense, at least, which is interesting because she is a 3-star. Especially changes are pretty strong. Okay, anyways, moving on to Fighter Maya, who I hope is geared, but I don't think she is. Okay, look, she wasn't geared, please forgive me, and she also doesn't have an artifact equipped, but I want to save 100k gold, so you're going to have to deal with this screen. This is pretty close to the build I had her on most of the season. You just want counter set with a lot of bad, conventionally bad gear, right? Because the thing about Fighter Maya is she doesn't need any other stat except for these 3 numbers right here, right? So you end up getting very jank looking gear on her. Like, look at this neck. Isn't this an awful neck? Well, it kind of is an awful neck, but maybe not for Fighter Maya, because, you know, it's got literally no death stat for Fighter Maya. Whereas something like this ring, which is honestly still pretty bad. It's got 18 equipment score of dead stat on it, essentially, so it's a pretty bad ring for Fighter Maya. And probably a bad ring for Karuna too, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, so technically, this neck is a higher equipment score than this ring. And the same goes for the boots, right? Where, well, I mean, these aren't very good Fighter Maya boots, but they get the job done, right? They're efficient for Fighter Maya. And you just want your defense as high as possible and your HP as high as possible. And so that she can tank anything and she can still have kill pressure on stuff with the Rocket Punch. This build is only really viable with Rocket Punch. You can probably still technically win if you maybe put it on like a tank artifact like Noble Ult or something, but it is going to probably time out due to, you know, I think there's like an hour limit or something on an attack before it just kicks you out and counts it as a loss. So yeah, we want Rocket Punch so you can actually kill things. And sometimes killing things fast is a part of the win condition. Like when we were bringing Fighter Maya into Aiden, for example, if the Aiden is high damage build and you can't kill her in like 2 or 3 S1s and she cycles back into another S3, you'd probably end up losing, honestly. But yeah, I think the general stat line for her is like 2.6k defense and as much HP as you can with at least 180 speed. Now, some people run speed set and that's fine. I just like the counter set because counter attack, rocket punching something, it's kind of funny. Honestly, you just go bonk, bonk, and then you S3 and then you bonk them again. But yeah, she's probably not going to be used as much next season, honestly. But I'm saying that about literally everything so far, so literally everything can't be not used as much next season. So we shall see, though. We shall see. But yeah, on the Rocket Punch, she'd be like 18k health on that build, which is pretty good. But yeah, moving on to Green Armin, who is also ungeared right now. Okay, I had given all of Green Armin's gear to Eaton, essentially, because I like picking Eaton in RTA. But essentially, you just want her on just high bulky protection set, right? Because you're generally bringing her into something where the protection set is relevant, and it's not like she needs speed or anything, so you might as well run the protection set. Now, as you can see, it's actually 6 pieces of free protection gear, so surely you can replicate this build, right? It's not very good, but I mean, this is what I used whenever I used her, right? So she wasn't used that much at the end of the season, though. It was definitely early on. Well, I say early on, for literally over half of the season, she was used quite often, so definitely was worth having. But her usage fell off as the defenses got more and more trying to kill you in one turn, because her mitigation is very good over a sustained fight with something dual attacking with like Shu, for example, where you get the double mitigation from her S2 passive on single attacks, and you get the Aria's effect. I think she's still good though, and obviously if you can muster 6 pieces of free gear for her, you should probably put them on her, just so you have her available. Like, she doesn't need any molas really. You can get away with just, you don't even need this cooldown, but I guess it's nice to have in case you need to press it again, but that's literally just free from Friendship 10, right? And then her EE is just the additional debuff dispel on Arias. So yeah, this is definitely worth having Green Armin around to exist, I suppose. But nothing too special about her. Anyways, moving on to Lone Crescent Bellona now. No way, is that another equip screen build showcase? Wow, insane. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to regear Dilibet for RTA, so I kind of took some of her high defense pieces I was using for the destruction build I had her on. And, well, we got to this, which I guess is kind of good, but it's kind of okay, copium at the same time. But yeah, Lone Crescent Bellona is probably going to get used, and a destruction build like this will be pretty good. Because Landy, as you know, has a lot of anti-crit in her kit, so a unit like Lone Crescent Bellona is quite good into her. However, obviously, it's not inherent that the Lone Crescent Bellona actually wins into the Landy, because the Landy can just kill the Lone Crescent Bellona. But technically, the the Landy builds that could kill the LCB, you'd probably be killing in one hit anyways with her, right? The artifact you generally run on her is a Sacred Scythe. Or I've run Tachi quite a bit as well on the follow-up attacks. I'm pretty sure I use Lone Crescent Bellona more on follow-up attacks, honestly, but I think it's worth including her here because of how relevant Landy is likely going to be in the upcoming season. But yeah, I think this is a really good stat line for her next season though. Like it's very bulky and it still does damage, though it's a little bit slow. Maybe needs immunity, but immunity is kind of hard to fit in, and pen set is really high value on her as well, because she doesn't have any innate pen on her and on any of her abilities. But yeah, it's... I mean, like, this build is fine too, honestly, but I think having high EHP is a lot more important when you're attacking something, right? But yeah, she's very good for the next season. And wait, this is the first ML5 I've shown. Wow. Quite a very diverse Guild War meta where you just don't use ML5s, generally speaking. Well, unironically though. Anyways. Moving on to Dark Corvus. Okay, my Dark Corvus is actually on really copium gear at the moment. I gave a lot of his very strong tank pieces to Lethe, actually. And I think they'll probably see relatively equal usage next season. Potentially. Dark Corvus has higher potential, though, because he's dark, so he can bait Landy, and he can also just probably one-tap her turn 1 with his S3. But, I mean, this is, like, okay for leftover gear, I suppose. Like, it's all pretty low gear score stuff. Like, look at these boots. How did these boots even exist on my account? We don't know, but they are equipped on Dark Corvus. Yeah, the only good piece of gear on him is this chest piece, which is only okay, honestly, because 50 ER isn't really going to do much, is it? But it's important to have, decent mix of defense and HP. But like, if we go to the old build I had him on, if you want to see, it was this piece, and this piece, right? So, was it this piece? Probably. Oh, wait. And it was, I think, this one? Yes, but I also have this one now. But yeah, you get the idea. It's, like 2k defense, 3.4k, which is way higher EHP than this left side build. And it's essentially doing the same damage. Like, 748 health for 200 defense. I'd do that any time of the day. But yeah, I mean, this is the type of stat line you're going for on him. Because you don't want to die and you still want to kill. Also, please mold your S3 fully so you don't lose an attack and a war. Thanks in advance. But for an artifact, you generally want him actually on the Lethe artifact, which gives him an multiplier to his health. But you can still run damage reduction artifacts like the, what's it called? The Proof of Valor or the Sepulchrum, right? So both of those are still valid, but the fact that Prayer of Solitude gives him a multiplier to his health, which is a multiplier to his EHP, and it gives damage on the S3, so you're getting just double multiplier on his S3 damage, is just very good for him. And I would recommend that artifact generally. But yeah, there's not really much to say about Dark Corvus. Like he just kills stuff with his S3, and he tanks stuff because he only needs to kill stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but we'll pretend like it does. Anyways, on to Troublemaker Crozet. Okay, so for leftover unreforged tank pieces, is this even that bad? Kind of. But I think it would, honestly, I'd be fine bringing this build into Guild War. So if you want a more relatable Crozet, here he is. I don't think you need this much ER though, but it is an ER ring, so what can you do? But yeah, he was used quite a bit into Ran defenses at the start at least. Towards the end, I don't think he was used that much, but the thing Crozet gives you that a lot of knights don't give you is he has his damage sharing built in, and he also has a cleanse built in, right? That is a way more utility than most knights provide, right? And his cleanse also pushes, which is really good to have on your team. Well, pushes when you have the correct EE equipped, I suppose. Sometimes the heal EE is more relevant, but I've literally never used the heal EE, so we'll pretend like it doesn't exist. But yeah, like, so example, Ran S3s, death breaks your Destina, let's say. Crozet cleanses the death break off of Destina, and then Destina cleanses the death break off of the Aria. Wow! Suddenly, you just win because you have Aria on your team, and you're going to win anyways because you're going to dodge. No, that's a joke, kidding. But yeah, the thing about Crozet though is that it kind of falls apart when Ran is slower than him, right? So you don't get your reactive push, and then if Ran is slower than you, he is also generally pretty high effectiveness. So yeah, that's why his usage kind of fell off. I think he's still pretty strong though, because you can, because of the built-in damage sharing, right? So if you have something like Spirit Isoline, you get to be more versatile with the artifact and run something like Bastion of Perlucia, right? So she doesn't get RNL'd by a Ran. But the defenses where that is relevant aren't too common. But yeah, I mean, he's just a knight, you know? Moving on to Lionheart next. Okay, I'm pretty proud of this Lionheart build. Lionsteel is very relevant if you're bringing her on Guild War offense. So you can't really use the RTA Destruction Lionheart for that purpose, but I mean, the fact that it's a crit chance neck on Lionsteel, I get a pretty good stat line still, with the SSS imprint though, so I'm cheating a lot of stats, right? And getting a lot of free stats. That lets me fit in a bit of ER. But if you have like the same stat line without the ER, your build is looking pretty nice still. But yeah, you want some form of damage reduction on her, either the Draco Plate or the Proof of Valor, just so she's not dying to Shu, Fushes and stuff. But I mean, you're generally pairing her with like Roana and Pyllis, so I don't think she's going to take that much damage. But I'm not sure how good she will be next season. Obviously, like all of this always depends on what their defenses are comprised of, right? But I can kind of see it being where like she's just not super relevant because I mean, maybe she'll be used into the landy defenses, but once again, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, she's just a very good unit that can just beat most C-Lilius defenses. Like if you want to just ego it and pretend like you don't have a lose con of just dying to the landy, right? Right. Anyways, moving on to I think Krau is next. Yeah, Krau. Okay, here is the infinite gear score. 6 pieces of free health gear Krau with no artifact equipped. This is all you really need, generally speaking. When it's free gear swap, I give him better gear temporarily so that he can like tank a Zeo S3, for example. But most of the time, you're only using him to tank like a Primero S3 or maybe Alencia. So in the case of Alencia, this ER is good because I can just put Bastion of Hope on him, and suddenly he probably can't get death broken by her if we pretend like her effectiveness EE doesn't exist, right? And then you're just good to go. But yeah, he's not as relevant as he used to be, so he obviously gets the leftover health gear, but it's good to have him like on something that's semi-usable at least, so that you can whip him out sometimes. But yeah, having high health and decent defense is kind of needed because you know he's still a tank, right? You want him to tank stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much to say about Krau. If they have a green unit that does a lot of damage, put him on the Holy Sacrifice, and then you just kind of win because they're nuking him, and then he nukes them back with his horse. Wow, and he also has a death buff, which is also pretty nice. Anyways, moving on to a real unit, Arunka, the first real unit. Okay, here is Arunka. She is on some pretty good gear, I think. It's kind of hard to get her attack this high. Obviously, it's attack boots to get this high at this speed. Technically, speed boots on attack set with like literally the same subs would be way better, I'm pretty sure. But obviously, who has attack set on their account? Any Golem gamers out there? Probably not. But the way you get a really high attack is you actually get like high flat attack subs on her. So conventionally, the string's pretty bad, but on Arunka, pretty good actually, because you know it allows you to get the attack higher. Wow, who did that? I generally run either Spear on her, because Spear is better than the Crown artifact, Little Queen Siege Crown, because Arunka's S3 has like 240% increased damage to barrier targets already, right? So that kind of dilutes the Crown's damage increase, right? So you end up doing just it's a lot less damage than say 17% increased attack from here, even if you have attack buff. If you don't have attack buff, it's even better because, you know, it's getting diluted less, right? So yeah, that's additive with this though, right? So it's essentially giving her 47% increased attack, not this number times this number, just for the record. So yeah, and then that is also additive with attack buff, right? See, you end up with 97 increased attack, which is still, you know, relative to the 248% increased damage on her S3, is still relevant. Now, having her tanky is actually kind of relevant if you're bringing her into landy defenses. I would say you want Tooth, though, into the more bruiser scenarios, because in those bruiser scenarios, if you don't kill, because it's like a proof of valor landy, you do want that fixed damage to finish her off afterwards. And you'll have some cycling like Emilia or Destina maybe, so it should be fine, even if you don't kill landies into like Airwall landy. But yeah, I pretty much always brought Arunka whenever I saw that Airwall Aiden Celine defense, and it just can't lose. It can't lose. She's too powerful. How can you defeat Arunka? You cannot defeat Arunka. Too good of a unit. Trust me, bro. Build Arunka. I mean, like Arunka's low mola investment as well, if you want to think about it like that, because you don't need the S2 molas, and you just need to actually max the S3 damage, right? And you don't need any in S1 at all. So if you do have some spare mola, maybe consider building the Arunka. Okay, Lethe is the last unit on the list here that I had, I'm pretty sure. So the thing with Lethe is that if she does fail to kill something with her Kraken proc, it actually takes quite a bit of time to get another one off on them, because you have to essentially, you won't have the souls to soul burn again for an extra turn, so you'll have to S1 3 times, which she does cycle pretty fast with the speed buff on her S1, but it's kind of rough sometimes if you don't kill. So she's I'm kind of on the fence about how good she is or isn't, but I think if you can build her tanky enough, kind of like this build, maybe a bit higher defense and a little bit lower health might be better. You don't need the ER, so you know you can minus 70 gear score her and maybe get a comparable build. Now I did craft event for her, so obviously my build's gonna look pretty nice, I think. But yeah, the general idea is to have her potentially tanking something and also just killing something, because if she does kill something on the second turn, you generally will have enough sustain and tankiness on your team to just win from there. But obviously into things like injury, you're just kind of inting sometimes, like things like injury Shu or injury Landy is not a good time. So maybe not super versatile, but I think she's worth mentioning because, you know, she's technically a more proactive Dark Corvus. But Dark Corvus is already proactive Dark Corvus with Aria, so maybe not super duper relevant, but I'll include her just because I wanted to show her off, because her stat line is really good and she's got a lot of other good things going for her. Yeah, I think that's the end of the units that I wanted to show here. Obviously I used a lot more, but everything else is either follow-up or just very niche use cases that you probably don't actually need. Now, just to mention again, we are recruiting in Talentless. I'll put a link to the Discord server where you can start the application in the description. And yeah, but I think that about covers it here for me. Sorry this took so long to come out, but it's a lot easier to press find opponent in RTA than it is to record a video. We're doing alright right now. I'm sitting in Legend. I'm kind of inting games though, so maybe I get good and get RNG less. No, it's all RNG loss, trust me, bro. But yeah. If you don't want to see some RTA gameplay, I've been streaming on Twitch quite often. I'll try to upload a few RTA videos before the season ends. But yeah, that's it for me today. Thank you all for watching to the end if you did get here. And subscribe if you enjoy this type of stuff. I'll hopefully help guide you through the tumultuous lane D season. If Smilegate doesn't print an answer, so let's pray it's not too bad. But yeah, Thanks for watching. See you soon. Subscribe if I didn't say that already. Later.